history of the radio began in 1895 when Guglielmo Marconi invented the first wireless telegraph. Marconi was known as the father of radio. By 1896, Marconi could send and receive telegraph code over 2 miles. Marconi first presented his invention to the British, and they were astounded. The British were willing to use his inventions to enhance communication with their large navy and merchant fleets. By 1899, Marconi successfully transmitted across the English Channel. Not only was Marconi a huge part of this invention of radio, but a Canadian man named Reginald Fessenden also aided in his invention. Fessenden is known for inventing the liquid barretter. The liquid barretter was the first audio device to permit reception of wireless voice transmissions. In that same year, the audion tube was created. This was a vacuum tube that improved and amplified wireless signals. This began the age of broadcasting, which was transmitting voices and music a great distance to a vast amount of people. But this was delayed for 2 decades at the beginning of the 20th century because of lawsuits and patents. Over time, radio went from only military usage to becoming a commercial and entertainment giant. By the year 1922, there were nearly 1 million radios in American homes. In today's time, radios don't only exist in homes, but in cars and mobile devices.
Well, it's changed over time. When I was growing up, I grew up to the soundtrack of my parents listening to morning news, and so that was a regular part of my life.
In terms of listening to radio on mobile devices, companies such as Pandora, iHeartRadio, and Spotify allow you to open a specific app on your mobile device. With these apps, people have much more control over the station and the genre of music listeners want to listen to. So, what kind of devices do you use to listen to your radio?
Oh, I listen to my music on my phone. Usually I listen to Spotify, and then most of the time when I listen to it, it's usually when I'm coming from home
with
to
a dial
school.
That you had to turn manually, and it was only AM. And we would listen in the car, and we'd listen to ball games and the news. Rarely would we listen to music until I was kind of in my an adolescent, and then we would listen to AM radio rock stations.
It's just a thing that I use on a daily basis. Like if I didn't have it, it'd be a silent ride, and I don't like silent rides.
Well, I definitely use the radio in the car. I find myself listening to Elvis Duran in the morning show, classic radio, Q102, stuff like that.
But since I got my smartphone, and if you don't mind me showing you, I'll tell you how I use it now. I'm a big fan of TuneIn Radio, which you can put in any radio station. It's kind of like iHeart. So, I can be listening to the news from New York City. I listen to the BBC. I also, because I love French, I studied in France, I listen to RFI Monde, which is a French radio station. So some mornings I'll listen to French radio and keep my French up. You can listen to, I listen to African radio stations sometimes.
In your everyday life. I usually use it in the car. I don't use it much at home other than that. I'm more of an aux-cord kind of guy, so.
But that's okay, like, do you use Pandora and all that?
Yeah, I use Pandora, Spotify, stuff like that.
So that counts for
Yeah, iTunes a lot too.
How do you think radio affects your everyday life?
It could affect your life if you're driving, you want to hear what the traffic's going on, news and stuff.
Since radio has become popular, different radio stations have come about over the years. The first radio station was based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It was named the KDKA. The KDKA became licensed on October 27, 1920, and its first ever broadcast was on November 2, 1920. KDKA would be very impressed to know that currently there are thousands of radio stations around the United States. Some popular radio stations today are 98.9, 96.5, and 102.1. These local radio stations are good examples of FM stations. AM stations are not as popular as FM stations, but still attract a vast audience.